You ever get that feeling that our history books might be missing a chapter? Like a really big one. Well, today we're diving headfirst into one of the most compelling mysteries from our deep past. This whole idea of a lost, advanced civilization and a new scientific model that might just crack the whole paradox wide open.
The story, you have to admit, is incredible. You've probably seen it pop up in shows like Ancient Apocalypse. The idea is that there was this super sophisticated global mother culture way back in the Ice Age, and then, poof, wiped off the map by some cataclysm. The survivors, the story goes, then traveled the world, teaching everyone else about agriculture and astronomy. It's a fantastic story, but it slams right into a huge wall with mainstream science. And the question at the heart of it all is actually pretty simple. If a civilization was advanced enough to map the entire globe, where are its cities? Where are its metal tools? Where's the writing? Why can't we find any of the stuff?
And that brings us to what we can call the lost civilization paradox. Now, this isn't just scientists waving it off. It's actually a really fascinating puzzle. And it's built around 4 specific and very serious scientific challenges that any theory like this has to answer.
Okay, so these objections are pretty heavy. They break down like this. First, you've got the evidence problem. No cities, no metal, none of the durable stuff we'd expect to find. Then, there's a logical issue called hyperdiffusionism, this idea that cool things, like pyramids, couldn't have been invented by different people independently. The timeline is also a total mess. A lot of the key sites they point to were built thousands of years after the supposed cataclysm. And finally, that cataclysm itself, the evidence for a giant comet strike is, well, inconsistent at best.
So yeah, those are some tough hurdles to clear. But what if the whole premise is just a little bit off? What if we're searching for this single Atlantis-style empire when the reality was something completely different? And honestly, maybe even cooler.
And this is where a brand new model comes into play. It's called the Glacial Refugia Knowledge Network, or GRKN for short. It says, hey, maybe we shouldn't be looking for one single mother culture, but for a distributed, interconnected network of absolutely brilliant innovators scattered all across the globe during the last ice age. So the whole foundation of this idea is something called glacial refugia. You see, during the absolute worst parts of the ice age, humanity basically held on in about 20 isolated pockets where life was still possible. Think of them like ecological lifeboats. But they weren't just about survival. These places became little laboratories of innovation, where unique, specialized knowledge could blossom in isolation.
And this table just lays out the difference perfectly. Instead of one single mother culture, the GRKN model imagines about 20 interconnected hubs. Instead of searching for giant stone monuments, it tells us we should be looking for signs of sophisticated but perishable technologies. And instead of a single massive cosmic impact causing the collapse, it suggests a cascading network failure, all driven by good old-fashioned climate change.
Okay, so how does this network idea solve that huge problem we talked about, the evidentiary paradox? You know, if these Ice Age folks were so smart, where's all their advanced stuff? Well, the GRKN model has a really compelling answer. Just let this number sink in for a second. Less than 3%. That is the statistical probability that anything made of organic material, we're talking wood, fibers, animal hides, will survive for over 12,000 years. We're out there looking for evidence, but pretty much everything our ancestors would have actually used has literally turned back into dust. This is exactly why our entire view of the past is so skewed. We find tons of stone tools because they have a whopping 75% chance of sticking around. But what if the most advanced technologies of the Ice Age weren't made of stone at all? What if they were incredibly complex wooden machines, or finely woven textiles, or sophisticated things made from plants? We would almost never, ever find them. And that is the key mental shift we have to make. Our whole idea of what advanced even means is totally biased toward things that don't rot away. The GRKN model suggests the true genius of these cultures was in mastering the organic world, creating these unbelievably sophisticated technologies that just were never designed to last for millennia. So if it wasn't a comet that brought this incredible era to an end, what was it? Well, the network model points to a completely different kind of catastrophe, one that was way slower, way more complex, and totally grounded in the real climate science of that time.
Right, so the cataclysm wasn't some sudden boom from space. It was a slow-motion collapse driven by the climate right here on Earth. The trigger was this huge event called Meltwater Pulse 1b. Basically, glaciers melted incredibly fast. Sea level shot up and flooded massive coastal plains where people were living. This drowned the key connection points, the hubs, and severed the links between these pockets of humanity. Once that network was broken, knowledge stopped flowing, and over time, isolated groups just forgot how to do complex things. It wasn't a sudden apocalypse. It was a slow, tragic fading away of knowledge.
And you know what? This model also helps make sense of those messy chronological problems. Suddenly, sites like Göbekli Tepe don't have to be the work of a lost civilization from before the flood. Instead, they pop up after the Younger Dryas collapse. Maybe they represent the survivors of that network breakdown, coming together and trying to rebuild, trying to preserve their ancestral knowledge using a new, much more permanent medium, giant stones.
When you look at it this way, it just shifts the entire story of our deep past. It stops being this tragic tale about a single lost empire and its crumbling ruins, and it becomes a much more dynamic and, frankly, more inspiring story about human ingenuity, about connection, and about incredible resilience.
The source material actually calls this a pulsed collaboration framework. Basically, history wasn't a straight line up. It was a cycle. It pulsed. During the cold, harsh times, groups fragmented and specialized. During warmer periods, they integrated and shared all that knowledge. Then, climate-driven collapse shattered the network all over again. And finally, in our current warm period, the survivors began to reintegrate that legacy knowledge, which is what might have sparked the rise of agriculture and civilization as we know it.
So in the end, what this model really gives us is a new origin story. Maybe we aren't the descendants of some single lost golden age that vanished. Maybe, just maybe, we're the heirs to something far more impressive. A brilliant, resilient, and globally interconnected network that faced unimaginable climate change, adapted to it, and survived.
It completely reframes how we look at our ancestors, doesn't it? And it leaves us with this one really fascinating thought to chew on. If a network this sophisticated could be almost completely forgotten just because it was hidden behind our bias for stone and monuments, what other incredible stories of connection and innovation are still out there, waiting to be discovered in our shared human past?